In today's video, we're looking at the restructuring and reorganization of the Nazi Party from 1924 to 1929. There are 3 essential questions you should be able to answer by the end of this video. The first, why did the Nazi Party need to be restructured at this time? The second, what were the 5 different aspects that Hitler made changes to? And the third, did these changes improve the party's appeal? Why or why not? To begin, let's look back on what we were talking about in our last video and see how it connects to this video. We need to remember that in February of 1924, after the failed Munich Putsch, Hitler was sentenced to 5 years in jail. Then, on May 4th, although the Nazi Party was banned, the Nazis actually win 32 seats in the Reichstag. These are the first seats that the Nazis win in the Reichstag, and they are winning them under the name of the National Socialist Freedom Movement. So they were actually winning seats when Hitler was in jail and the party was banned. On December 7th, there's another election, and in this election, the Nazis won only 14 seats. So we can see that right after the Munich Putsch and the trial, the Nazi popularity was high. They win a lot of seats. However, over the next few months, we see a swift decline in their popularity as people become more satisfied with the Weimar government. On December 20th, Hitler was released from prison, and then, on February 27th, the Nazi Party was relaunched in the Munich Beer Hall, the same place the Munich Putsch occurred. With Nazi support declining throughout the period, it was therefore very clear that the Nazi Party needed a new strategy. And to do this, Hitler made 5 or so changes to the party. The first change he made was to its organization. He felt that it needed to be better organized, so he set up Nazi headquarters and hired 2 very efficient men to run it. The first was Philipp Bühler. Bühler had actually joined the Nazi Party very early on. He is Nazi member number 12. He becomes the secretary of the Nazi Party and works towards organizing records and paperwork. The second person, and potentially more important, was Franz Schwarz, who in 1922 became the treasurer of the Nazi Party. So Schwarz was in charge of keeping track of the money spent, invested, and earned by the party. And here is a quote from Hitler that says, "It's unbelievable what the party owes to Schwarz. It was thanks to the good order which he kept in our finances that we were able to develop so rapidly." So Schwarz plays quite an important role in the development of the party. Another way Hitler worked to organize the party was to divide Germany up into regions, which were called Gau. So Germany was divided up into these regions, and Hitler appointed a man to work as the regional leader in that area. And this regional leader was called a Gauleiter. So you had a Gauleiter in Silesia, a Gauleiter in Berlin, etc., etc. The Gauleiter's job was to run the Nazi Party in their particular region, and they answered only to Hitler. This brought all of the leaders under the direct control of Hitler. Moving on, Hitler also made changes to the funding of the party. Hitler began making friends with very wealthy businessmen because businesses shared the Nazi hatred of communists, and they disliked trade unions, which was something that the Nazis also stood for. So, by the early 1930s, the Nazi Party was receiving donations from Thyssen and Krupp. In the 1930s, these were 2 separate companies, as well as Bosch. These are companies that exist even today. Thyssen-Krupp deals with steel and the automotive industry, and Bosch is an engineering and electronics company. They are both huge multinational companies. And in the 1930s, they were giving donations to the Nazi Party. Another change that Hitler made was to the SA and SS. The SA and SS gave the Nazi Party an appearance of strength and order, which was quite important. Many people saw the Weimar government as disorganized and unstable, so the appearance of order really appealed to many voters. Throughout the mid to late 1920s, Hitler strengthened the SA by expanding it to about 400,000 members by 1930. However, the Munich Putsch had taught Hitler the importance of a very loyal bodyguard, and Hitler didn't fully trust the brown shirts because they were a bit unruly and they really liked their leader, whose name was Ernst Röhm. We learned about him in previous videos. As a result, in 1925, Hitler set up a new security group he calls the Schutzstaffel, which in English translates to Protection Squad. Sometimes you might hear them being called the SS. Heinrich Himmler ran the SS. They had black uniforms and were widely feared because they were perceived to be ruthless. We will look into the SS in a lot more detail in the future. The next thing that happened was the development of propaganda. So Joseph Goebbels is the Gauleiter for Berlin, and he works with Hitler to improve propaganda. Propaganda is information or ideas that help your party or cause, and sometimes they can harm other people's causes as well. It's basically advertising and promotional materials for the party. So the first thing we're going to look at are what messages were being promoted through Nazi propaganda. The Nazis developed very simple messages and repeated them through a variety of means. The first message they were trying to send was about scapegoats. They wanted to blame people for Germany's problems, so they blamed the Jews, the communists, and the moderate leaders, especially the Social Democrats of the Weimar Republic. The next thing that they were trying to say in their propaganda was that Hitler was the voice and leader of the Nazis, and that Hitler was pretty amazing. He is shown as being very strong, stern, and in complete control. And in this, the message that they were trying to convey is that all-important image of strength and order. They wanted to demonstrate to the German people that the Nazis were strong and organized, and this was due to Hitler's passionate speeches and charisma. Here you can see a photo of a large Nazi rally. Rallies were a big group demonstrations in which everything was perfectly organized. Everyone stands in straight lines and everything looks perfect. Another way they promoted this image of strength and organization was through the power of the SA and the SS. The next question is, how were they spreading these messages? Number 1 is, of course, Mein Kampf, the book that Hitler wrote while he was in prison, which outlined all of the Nazi Party policies. Number 2 was using modern technology. The Nazis used things like radio, films, records, and airplanes so that many, many people throughout Germany were able to see Hitler and hear his speeches. Hitler used this modern technology that was just being developed to effectively promote the Nazi ideology and cause. Another thing that the Nazis did was to hold public meetings and evening classes. So in each Gau, remember Gau means region, they organized meetings to discuss issues that people were facing or people there were concerns about. And during these evening classes, they would invite visiting speakers to come and speak. If the Nazis found that a particular speaker was popular, they would repeat that session again. And if you thought that was enough, they were also training Nazi Party members in the art of public speaking, training them to help convince other people to join the party. Through these methods, modern technology, meetings, evening classes, and Mein Kampf, the Nazis created an extremely effective and responsive system of propaganda. They focused on issues that people thought were important, and they changed their policies in accordance with what would help them increase their popularity. In other words, when they found an issue that people would support, they changed their policies to make that an important issue for the Nazi Party as well. The next thing, and this is an example of how they changed their policies to fit with gaining support, is a working to middle class shift. So in the 1920s, the early 1920s, the Nazi Party was really focused on gaining support from the middle classes. They ran many public meetings and discovered that it was mostly the anti-Jewish message that the working classes were responding to, so they increased their anti-Jewish propaganda. However, by 1928 we see a shift. At this time, the party felt as if it wasn't getting enough support from workers, and most of their new party members were from the middle class or they were farmers. So the Nazi Party began to focus on gaining support from these groups and pleasing the middle class and farmers. So what do these changes bring about by 1928? Well, in 1928, the Nazi Party was well organized. It had about 100,000 members, and Hitler had become a national figure. However, we have to remember that Stresemann was still in power at the time, and Stresemann's improvement of the Weimar Republic meant that more Germans supported the Republic, and they also supported more moderate political parties, because, as the old adage goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And at this time, all extremist parties in Germany were losing support. So, all in all, by May 1928, the Nazis had only 12 seats in the Reichstag, which was only 2.6% of the vote. Furthermore, they were only the 9th biggest party. Yet the following year, in 1929, that was all to change. In our next video, we will be talking about the Great Depression and how this increased Nazi support. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.